She didn't know who moved first. She wasn't sure it mattered. What she knew was that one moment she was standing in the doorway, and the next she wasn't. And Carlos was no longer sitting behind his desk. And somewhere in the small quiet space between one breath and the next, he kissed her. It was not a performance. It was not rehearsed. It was gentle and honest and over almost before it began, and when he pulled back, he looked at her with an expression she had never seen on him before. It was something soft. Neither of them said anything for a moment. Then Carlos took a slow breath and looked at the floor briefly before looking back at her. "That wasn't professional," he said quietly. "No," she agreed. "It wasn't." There was another silence. "Go to sleep, Emily," he said. His voice was gentle this time, much different than he said anything else. She looked at him for one more second. Then she turned and walked back down the hallway to her room, closed the door softly behind her, and stood in the dark for a long moment with her back against the door. Outside, she could hear the faint sound of his office chair, the quiet click of his laptop closing. He had turned off the light. She smiled in the dark where nobody could see it, walked to her bed and lay down, thinking about the kiss they shared. She fell asleep faster than she had in weeks. The morning after the kiss, Emily woke up earlier than usual. She lay in bed for a few minutes just staring at the ceiling, replaying the night before the way you replay something you're not sure actually happened. But it happened. She knew it had happened, because she could still feel the quiet weight of it sitting in her chest like something that had been placed there carefully and hadn't moved since. She got up, got dressed, and went to the kitchen. Carlos was already there. He was at the counter making coffee, back to her, and when he heard her come in, he turned around. They looked at each other for a moment. Just a moment. And then he said, "Good morning," in a voice that was normal and even, and gave absolutely nothing away. "Good morning," she said. He poured a second cup without being asked, and set it on the counter for her. She picked it up. They stood in the kitchen drinking their coffee in a silence that was neither comfortable nor uncomfortable, but somewhere in between, like two people standing on new ground and being very careful about where they put their feet. Neither of them mentioned the night before. Neither of them needed to. Carlos left for the office at 7:30. Emily stood at the kitchen window with her second cup of coffee and watched the city below and thought about 5 weeks. 5 weeks, and the contract would be over. She wasn't sure anymore whether that felt like a relief or something else entirely. The week that followed was different from every other week since the arrangement began. They didn't talk about the kiss, but they stopped pretending it hadn't happened either. The careful distance Carlos had put between them the week before quietly disappeared. They had dinner together twice without it being planned. He asked her opinion on a creative brief he was working on one evening, and they ended up at the dining table for 2 hours going back and forth about it in the way that people do when they're both genuinely interested in getting something right. She made him laugh once. A real one, not the polished social laugh he used at business dinners. And she stored that away somewhere private because it felt like something worth keeping. It was the best week of the entire arrangement, which was exactly why what happened at the end of it hit as hard as it did. It was Dana. Emily should have seen it coming. Dana had been watching from the beginning. She was observant and she was persistent, and she was Emily's closest friend at Nexus Media, which meant she knew Emily well enough to know when something didn't add up. She appeared at Emily's desk on a Friday afternoon with an expression that was different from her usual curiosity. This wasn't Dana wanting gossip. This was Dana who had found something. "I need to talk to you," Dana said. "Not here. Can we go to the conference room?" Emily looked at her face and felt a cold stillness settle in her stomach. "Okay," she said. She followed Dana into the small conference room at the end of the hall. Dana closed the door, turned around, and folded her arms. "I know about the contract," she said. The cold stillness spread. Emily kept her face neutral. "I don't know what you mean, she said. Emily. Dana's voice was not unkind, but it was firm. I was in the filing room 3 days ago looking for the Harlow Group preliminary documents, and I found a folder that wasn't where it was supposed to be. I wasn't snooping. I genuinely wasn't. But the folder was open and your name was on the top page, and I saw enough to understand what it was, she said. Emily said nothing. Dana unfolded her arms and her expression shifted into something more careful. I'm not going to do anything with it, she said. I want you to know that first. You're my friend and I'm not here to hurt you. But Emily, there is someone else in this office who knows. Emily looked at her sharply. Who? She said. Marcus Reed, Dana said. Emily closed her eyes briefly. Marcus Reed was the deputy head of acquisitions. He was a man who had been quietly competing with Carlos for the top position at Nexus Media for the better part of 3 years. He was sharp, he was ambitious, and he had never bothered to hide the fact that he wanted Carlos's chair. How did he find out? Emily said. I don't know. But I overheard him on the phone this morning and he was talking about the Harlow merger, and he used the words contract arrangement. He's going to take it to Harlow directly. I think he's planning to do it before the merger closes, Dana said. Emily stood very still for a moment. Then she picked up her phone and typed one message to Carlos. We have a problem. Come find me. Carlos found her in the conference room 4 minutes later. Dana excused herself quietly and closed the door behind her. Emily told Carlos everything in the same order Dana had told her. She watched his face as she spoke. He was still, the way he always was when he was processing something serious, but she could see the shift behind his eyes. It was a quick, calculated movement of a man reorganizing his next steps in real time. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. How long does he have before the closing meeting? Emily asked. 8 days, Carlos said. Then he'll move before then, she said. Yes, Carlos said. What do we do? She said. Carlos looked at her. We get to Harlow first, he said. They called Richard Harlow that evening from Carlos's apartment. Carlos made the call with Emily sitting across from him at the dining table, close enough that Harlow could hear her voice if needed. The conversation started professionally, covering the final closing details, the paperwork timeline, and the transition plan. Richard Harlow was in good spirits. The deal was almost done, and he made no secret of the fact that he was pleased with how things had progressed. Then Carlos said, Richard, there's something I want to be straightforward with you about before we close. A brief pause on the other end. Go ahead, Harlow said. Emily held her breath. When we first discussed the terms of this partnership, you were clear about the kind of stability you expected from a business partner. I want you to know that everything you've seen between Emily and myself over these past weeks has been fake, Carlos said. Emily looked at him across the table. He wasn't looking at her. He was looking at the phone. But something in the way he said those words without the careful performance of their dinner conversations told her he wasn't saying them for Richard Harlow. Carlos, Harlow said, and his voice had shifted into something warmer and almost amused. I've been in business for 40 years. I've sat across from more people than I can count, and I know the difference between a man performing stability and a man who has actually found it. I knew at that first dinner, he said. Carlos was quiet for a second. You knew, he said. I suspected. But I watched the two of you all evening, and by the end of the main course I wasn't suspicious anymore, Harlow said. Whatever arrangement you started with, what I saw at that table was real enough for me. The deal closes in 8 days. I'll see you both then. The call ended. Emily and Carlos sat in silence for a moment. He knew, she said. Apparently, Carlos replied. Emily let out a breath that was somewhere between a laugh and a sigh. So Marcus Reed is going to call Harlow and tell him about the contract, and Harlow is going to tell him he already knows, she said. More or less, Carlos said. She shook her head slowly. All of that for nothing. Not nothing, Carlos said quietly. She looked at him. He was looking at her now, directly, with that open, unguarded expression she had first seen in his office doorway at 2 in the morning. The one that looked nothing like the man she had written about in her diary. Not nothing, he said again. And this time he let it sit there between them without qualifying it or pulling back from it, and Emily understood exactly what he meant. She looked down at the table for a moment and then backed up at him. We have 5 weeks left, Emily said. 4.5, he said. We should probably talk about what happens after, she said. We should, he said. Emily was about to leave when Carlos held her hand. She stopped, her heart fluttering at the way the light connection felt so deep. Carlos let out a sigh before speaking. Emily, I know we've been faking our relationship, but something about you just makes me feel different. In this period I've lived with you, I can't understand what you did to me. Emily, I'm asking that we make this real. Would you be my girlfriend? Emily stared at him, not quite shocked as she expected to be. Then, she finally spoke. I would be your girlfriend, Mr. Carlos. And promise me you'd always write about me in your diary. I promise, Emily said with a giggle. Then their lips met for a kiss. This is the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story till the end, please like, comment, share, and also subscribe to our channel for more romance series.